slides here. This is a little bit of review in the front end, and then we'll get into the new material as we move along here. So SQL Plus, I think did we pull that up and look at it last time?
I think briefly.
Yeah, very briefly. Yeah, so that's the command line interface. I think we did our select count through there. We can see, okay, we're hitting the employees table just like we were in the SQL developer. And we brought up SQL developer today just to make sure we could connect to the HR database. Just doing the select count for employee statement was all that we needed to do. And just as a reminder here, if you bring up SQL Plus, you can go in as SQL Plus / as sysdba. And that shows you the Oracle version that's running right here, 11.2. Oracle always provides their releases as 11.1, 11.2, then 12.1, 12.2. They're always a .1 or a .2 on the major releases. Just put the, I'm typing this in because I can fast, you don't need to do it this way. Next is select count for employees here. I get I have the CLI output shown. And over here, I have the CLI output shown at this time for a GUI perspective. So SQL Plus and SQL Developer are the two ways of interfacing with Oracle. SQL Plus, the main reason for using that is if I want to execute scripts. All of my scripts are going to be SQL scripts that get run in the SQL Plus environment. Okay. So every commercial usage of Oracle is going to have SQL Plus scripts with whatever the variety of commands are that are in here. And then SQL Developer is just for convenience for GUI oriented persons that have that preference. All right, so getting back to the slide viewpoint.
So SQL Plus only runs from the command line?
Yes, no GUI. It's just like shell scripting from Unix perspective, only it's the scripting from an Oracle SQL perspective. So I know you've done testing, right?
I tried when I type SQL Plus. There might be some environment setting that I need to play with because I had to create a batch file where if I type after install, do the exact command, it won't work. So I create a batch file that look more like SQL exe somewhere. So yeah.
So SQL exe just needs to be in the path environment.
Yeah, something like that.
Path environment.
Environment. But I did see the command line come up.
Okay. All right, so SQL Developer, we've already taken a look at this. I'll have to get this full screen, just 1 second. Just using PowerPoints here. PDF copy of it. That was bad. There we go, on page. Now we got it. All right, tables we looked at briefly. So at this point, I don't think there's any discussion on tables. You're familiar with Microsoft Access, right? So then this is the point where it asks about the architecture of Access. So the tables part is just like Access. Okay. So there's various tables here. Let's see past this. All right. So the structure of the select statement is fairly important in terms of the clauses. So we're going to start looking at our checklist of what is it that we've covered, right? So when I write on the board here what the SQL select statement is, got select, and then there's items that come after the select. Okay, so what are the items that come after the select?
Column.
Right, so these are strictly the columns. All right, so there's columns in here. What else is in here?
Where you're selecting it from, the table name.
Okay, so for that particular answer, we'll start breaking this down a little bit. So there's a from clause here. So it'd be from some table. Okay, and I had shown in one of the queries that we've done this little bit of aliasing here. So I can say from table A and create this little alias.
Sure.
Okay. So selecting columns, and what else do I have in my select statements as far as the first clause, which is a select clause itself. It kind of sounds a little bit weird. This is a select statement. Okay. Select clause is the first portion. From clause, and there's some more clauses. But what else do I have in here?
Oh, you either have a wild card or you have the columns you want, right?
Right, so for special characters, I can have a wild card, meaning for columns. Okay, so we'll keep a separate category of that. But the other thing I can have in here is functions.
Column.
Well, it's like count, right?
Yeah.
Count is just a function. So there's all of these optional functions as well. So you can have functions in there, you can have columns, you always have columns of some type. Okay, the other item that we could have in there, and I'll show it, is you could put in actual literals. Okay, so that could just be like the digit 2 or some string. Okay, you can do expressions in here. So literals, expressions. So expressions could be multiplying the, trying to remember the column name exactly, that database, multiplying the salary times the commission percentage.
Salary.
So you get that combined. So you can have expressions, literals, column names, functions, all in this select statement. So there's a lot of power in here. And we keep expanding out the SQL statement. I think I'll make the board press as well.
And what are literals?
Literals are just like strings, numbers. It's like constants. You can think of it that way from a programming languages perspective. Okay, so as we expand out the select statement here, this is something I want us to get really, really, really comfortable with. You know it like the back of your hand. Okay. So we have from table A in the from clause. And if I'm doing joins between two different tables, like we did a join using department ID, I believe it was, you can just put a comma in here and identify the other table. So is it table 1, table 2? We'll see examples as we go along here, and put an alias on here. So why would I want to use the aliases? It's just it makes it a lot more readable and a lot less to read. Okay, so if I'm looking at these aliases and saying I want to do a join between departments and employees, I can say if table 1 is my employees, put an E right here. If table 2 is the departments, put a D right there. So there's employees and departments. And we'd seen an example of using that in the context of department ID last Tuesday, because department ID is in both table E for employees and table D for departments. So when you're up here with columns, there's this other little aspect here of saying that basically the table, you can do the table name dot column in order to differentiate. Okay, by talking about, by telling Oracle to pull department ID from department table or from the employee table.
Just SQL, when you read them, the A listing sometimes get confused because you don't, typically I thought you define A list first before you use it. So you could use the A list before even you see the next statement.
Correct.
That's why sometimes it just throw me off, like, where's this D dot until then the next statement you say, oh, okay, it's A list.
Okay, so
Yeah, and exactly to that point, this is a two-pass parsing
Yeah,
process.
that's what it makes it throw you off.
Parses through all of this, and then after it's parsed through all of it, then it forms what's called an execution plan.
I would think you say table one, make it A list E, and then you start using this, is you could actually use the E dot
Right,
something
before it's
first before
defined.
even you see it defined later on.
and to use the alias,
Mhm.
right, which is like, that's really the table name.
Right, it's just an alias for the table name. So this is, in an example format, this would be,
You have to put an underscore though, right? Is that,
it would be from employee, I don't remember if it's employee or employees, but.
It's just
it'd
a
be
space, so
employee,
you should separate by space.
Space, E,
Would it space sensitive, like two space would be thrown off, or
No.
it doesn't matter?
it just needs white space in
I
there.
need my space.
So just white space separating the table name and the alias, as an example. Okay, so we do is select from, and then what's the next major clause?
Manipulate.
So we've done selection. So the selection is across the columns, right? So the select statement is like, boom, okay, I've got my vertical slice. Now you got to do your horizontal slice. So which clause gives you the horizontal slice?
where,
Let's see. So we put in the where statement here. And where,
it meets some criterion or criteria.
so I'm just going to say where expressions here. There's lots of variation in there. So we'll unpack that today and next Tuesday and the following Tuesday. There's a lot of variation in there. You know, if we take it and unpack just a little bit, this is where the logical operators come into play. So I can have mathematical expressions, or I can have logical expressions, logical relationship. So the key thing in here is that this is going to be logical expressions. And it could be some mathematical expressions in there as well, but the heart and soul of the where clause is the logical expressions. All right, so for numeric, it's going to be equal to, not equal to, greater than, less than. When we get into strings and looking for character comparison, we can say like. So to the left of any of these operators is one column name. To the right is either a constant or value or variable or another column name. So there's always a column name on one side. So when we say logical expression, there's a column name, some type of operator, and then it could be another expression on the other side. And the complexity is potentially unnerving. Okay, we're not going to go into the unnerving space, but the operators are these right here. All right, there's also, when we get into looking at the where clause, there's also an operator called in. So in is used when we have subqueries. So in multi-row subquery. So I'm putting these terms in front of us today so that when it comes next Tuesday, we'll say, oh, I heard that once before. Because I like to get some repetition and doing a little bit of foreshadowing, because we're not going to get into subqueries. I don't believe, we could get into subqueries near the end of today. we'll certainly get into it next Tuesday.
What is word before subquery? Multi?
Multi-row subquery.
Okay.
In other words, if I have a subquery that just gives me one value back, I don't use the word, I don't need to use the word in. I could use one of these other operators that are oriented towards a single value coming back from the subquery. It's doing a single value or single row.
The subquery also can do a second table, right?
It can do a second, third table.
and
The subquery is just a repeat of everything right here.
I see, so it could be,
Uh,
but like you use parentheses, like subquery with the parentheses.
Exactly.
Select from another.
Mhm.
Okay.
As correctly identify exactly what you said. The parentheses identify a subquery. And we can also alias the result of that subquery and call it like F. Okay. So you can use the aliases off of tables. You can use it off of anonymously, so to speak, off of subquery results. All right, so the where clause gets very, very complicated, but it provides a huge amount of power and it's still very readable. All right, as we go down through the list for the select statement, this is select from where. I believe we had done the order by statement, right? Or maybe not. Okay, so let me give you the rest because the others I don't know that we touched on them. All right, so conventionally, usually the order by is going to be written last. So order by will be a column name. Alternatively, it could be the column position. By column position, I mean that if we have 2 or 3 columns listed here, the column positions are like 1, 2, 3. All right, so I can put down a digit here representing the occurrence positionally in sequence of where the column name occurs. And use the order by to just say order by 1, 2.
Now, are the column positions, are they numbered or is that
I think I know what direction you're going. There's no metadata behind the positioning.
okay, so if
Strictly
you were to use a number, column position 3, and somebody came along and reordered the columns or added another column, then your query could change,
Right.
right? Okay.
So this is like last name ID. I could say that my column position is 2. So I want to order for whatever this query is, I want to order it by employee ID.
Okay.
And so I just say order by 2, which means the ID. Okay.
But if I come along and I change that table and I put last name, first name ID, then you're gonna get it ordered by first name, right?
No. Because the position is not relative to the sequence in which the columns appear in the table. The position here is relative to what order I type the column names in here in the SQL select statement.
Oh, okay, all right.
Right, so this is
So it's not looking, it's looking to, all right, the whole query, it's not looking to the table itself. Okay,
correct.
got
Yeah,
it.
positioning here is strictly the way I wrote the
But you
column.
could use
Okay.
the actual name of the column. Right?
Okay.
It's a number 2. It's a number 2 down there. I could
Correct.
use the actual name too. Right? I mean,
Right,
yeah,
I
3
could've-
here.
I could have said ID here,
I see.
or I could say 2. Either way, it's the same.
Okay, so sometimes it throw me off a little bit.
Mhm. So the blue is examples written in here as we need.
Okay.
Got minimal board space to do examples, so so we need to talk about it a little bit. I'll throw examples in. Okay, so there's order by, and then there's ascending or descending.
All right, so that's obviously, that's straightforward.
Descending is the default.
So I don't need to specify descending. I want it to go the other way around, go from Z down to A. That would be ascending from Z to A. As I do this, I'm like, did I get that backwards? We'll figure it out. You got the idea. Ascending and descending is just the sort order. Hey, good morning. So I think you were on the machine against the wall, right?
Okay.
Okay. Just to stay consistent here.
Bad traffic day.
That's okay. I've recorded part of this so you can capture it at your leisure after today. All right, so we're doing through the select from, where, order by. So this is the basics, bread and butter of what a typical SQL statement is for reading data. There's a couple other clauses in here still, and they're optional. You know, literally this is optional, and this is optional. You don't need to have these present. Always have to have the select and the from present. Now there's another section in here. I'm going to double bracket these because these are your group functions. We'll see how this works out. So there's another clause in here called group by. We'll see how this works out. But I could group by department ID. So we stick to the notation I've been doing here. And this is a space right there. It's not all one word. So group by, and I've got an alias potentially in here. So I'll do my table alias as I indicated up here with the columns. So group by table. And then again, a column. So I can keep going with this. So column 1, column 2, whatever number of columns I want to do the grouping by. Okay. All right, when I do those group by functions, and I'm going to need, let's see, need one more color marker. Used to have 3 colors. I'll figure out a way to do that in just a moment. All right, so there's group by, column, and then optional even inside the group by is this having clause. So having is just another logical expression. All right, so let's look at the mapping and how these are working out to each other. I use dotted lines for my other color here. All right, so the logical expression here, that's the same as under the where clause. Okay. So same notation here. The column grouping, if I'm going to have this group by statement, that means I'm going to have functions. Okay, so I'm trying to do a count of all employees by department ID, something like that. Okay. So group by and functions always go together. Logical expressions, same concept here. And the way I've triple bracketed this means the having clause is optional when there's a group by. The only time I'd ever use a having clause is when there is a group by statement. Never use it in any other context. Okay, as we work out through this, just in a review perspective, the where clause does what slice of the data? Horizontal or vertical?
Horizontal.
Right, so the where clause is selecting the rows out of the table. And the select clause is, because where is doing the horizontal slice, the select clause is doing the vertical slice, and which columns are we going to grab out of the table. Right? So here's the map. This is the roadmap, and we'll be filling this in as we go. And as we spend our time today, we'll take a look at
Just putting other details into place here. Okay, so let's go back to this slide here. Okay, I'm going to stop the broadcast.